This is the TriSwimCoach Podcast, where the most difficult leg of the triathlon becomes your friend, leaving your struggles and your competition behind you. TriSwimCoach.com, helping you to laugh at the water.
Welcome to TriSwimCoach. This is Kevin, and this is episode number 135. And in just a minute, I have an interview coming up with Kim Chambers of kimswims.com. She recently completed an open water swim from the Farallon Islands to San Francisco in Northern California, which is 30 miles. And we get into that. There was a Netflix documentary featuring that swim and her story. And it's a really interesting interview. So stay tuned for that in just a minute. And in the meantime, I wanted to mention that we have a swim clinic coming up. We talked about it in a little more detail on the last show, number 134, with Dominic Latella of Swimbox. And that is going to be in Boston, Massachusetts. If you are interested in this swim clinic, it's a 2-day clinic. We're going to go over a lot of stuff. We're going to have some video. We're going to have a couple of lunches to meet the coaches, and it'll be a great time overall. And I'm sure that anyone in the area, or even if you're out of the area and want to fly in for the weekend, it'll be some time well invested. And so the website for that, if you want to check it out, is triswimcoach.com/Boston. And if you get in before June 1st, and this podcast will be out definitely before June 1st, you will get the discounted rate. So make sure to check that out before June 1st. But either way, I think it's well worth your time to go into Boston. We're only doing 3 clinics this year total. So this is one of your chances. We're going to have one in late August or mid-August, and then one in the fall out in California. So check it out and let me know if you have any questions. And then one more thing before we get to the interview. I started a new project. It's called Nomad Health Coach. So I am talking about all things health related from a philosophical standpoint. So a lot of philosophy, a lot of health tips, and we talk about fitness and how to burn fat and all those kinds of things. You can find out more at nomadhealthcoach.com, and you can sign up for the daily tips that I send out. And then I also have a Facebook page at facebook.com/nomadhealthcoach if you want to just give us a like there. So without further ado, here's my interview with Kim Chambers. Have a great week of training, and we'll talk to you soon. All right. I'm really excited to have Kim Chambers on the show today. And Kim is one of the world's best marathon swimmers and is the 6th person to complete the Ocean's 7, the Ultimate Open Water Swimming Challenge. And recently, a documentary has been released on Netflix about her attempt to become the first woman to swim 30 miles through a stretch of cold, rough, and shark-inhabited waters of the San Francisco coast. And I wanted to, before we start, I wanted to read a quote that she had on her website that I like. It says, "There is nothing quite like building up a goal that I set for myself, knowing that whatever the outcome, it is the process of preparing, not the destination that matters most. With each of the goals I have set for myself, when you achieve them, there is something that happens deep within the soul. I have had the great fortune of plumbing the depths of a sense of self that did not exist 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even a year ago. And it is constantly evolving." And her website is kimswims.com. Kim, welcome to TriSwimCoach.
Hi, Kevin. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I was inspired when I saw the documentary only a week ago. I was just kind of looking for something on Netflix, and I saw there was a swimming documentary up, and of course I go right to that. And then I started watching it, and then I realized, I'm like, wait, I know Kim. Like, I've talked to her before. Like, this is like, it's so familiar. And then I watched like half of the documentary, and then I went back to my emails and I found we had exchanged an email like a few years ago. And
yeah. I was so delighted to get your email. I was like, oh, great. So it's, no, I'm really honored that you're having me on your podcast, and, I admire what you do and sort of, sharing, other athletes. So it's a really cool thing that you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I know you're really busy with all kinds of requests at this point with the documentary coming out on Netflix. And I just wanted to say that it wasn't just the swim part of it that was inspiring. I like a lot of things that you're saying. It totally resonates with a lot of my philosophy and this idea of the process and the actual, like training for it and getting ready for it and all that. And that's the part that you're kind of living in the present and sort of being engaged rather than the finish line. And I think that's just an awesome message right there.
No, and thank you for getting it, because really these weren't athletic events for me. They were these journeys of the self. I was broken mentally and physically 10 years ago. And when you're in the depths of despair, you learn what you're made of. And each of these swims I did, I did them, I raised money for charity, and I love doing something that's bigger than myself. But they became these journeys where I got to learn a little bit more about myself. And it's sort of like, when you've got a lot of athletes that listen to your show, and it's like, when you do these stretches, you stretch out your arms, and you're like, oh, well, maybe I can stretch a little bit further. And you do one swim and you're like, well, if I can do that, maybe I can do this. So it's really has a snowballing effect, and is rather quite addictive when you realize that you're capable of far more than you think you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to start from the beginning and kind of get an idea of what it was like for you growing up, and how was it that swimming came into your life?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I'm from New Zealand. I grew up on a sheep and cattle farm in a very middle of sheep farming country in the North Island, and I didn't grow up as a swimmer. I basically became a swimmer at the age of 30, 31. But I've always been athletic. I love the outdoors, but I was a ballerina for 15 years from the age of 2 to 17. So that sort of laid a foundation for me of discipline, I guess, and focus.
Mm-hmm. And then so you started with being a ballerina for a while, and then how did you end up going into swimming?
Yeah, so I studied under the Royal Academy of Dancing. And I finished high school at the tender age of 17, and I was accepted into UC Berkeley. So I came from New Zealand to the US at that young age and studied. And at that time, I tried rowing at Cal. I loved the team aspect of it, because ballet is very individual. And then shortly after that, I pretty much became a gym rat. And in all honesty, I was the woman that went to the gym at exactly the same time every day, burned exactly the number of calories. We all know that those numbers on those machines are incorrect. But during that period, because I like a routine, but I loved working out. But I'll admit, I'm the first to admit that I guess I was pretty obsessed with it. And I was just basically a gym rat. And I finished my graduate studies at Berkeley, and then I found myself working in tech in Silicon Valley companies. And then I was a freelancer. And one day I've learned that I guess what I struggled with at time, and I'll lead into it, was that you can have trauma from seemingly the most innocuous, circumstances. Mm-hmm. I was on my way to work. I was wearing really, really high heels, because at the time for me, it was all about the outfit. I was very superficial, and I don't like being late. And I was, and it was just a slip down a staircase where I was living. And I have a very high pain tolerance thanks to years of point shoes with dancing. I remember sort of hitting my head, and my right leg hit this big ceramic pot where I had a plant at the bottom of the staircase. And I just sort of brushed it aside. I was a bit stunned, but I brushed it aside, and I had to get to work. And I just thought, well, I'm just going to have some terrible bruises. My leg continued to swell, and I don't remember passing out, but I passed out at this freelance job and found myself waking up and being told that I was 30 minutes from amputation, that they'd saved my leg, and I had pretty much a 1% chance of walking unassisted ever again. So I went from feeling sort of invincible, I never even sprained my ankle as a ballerina, to falling downstairs and then being served this sentence of disability. And that began this journey that went downhill pretty fast, but allowed me the opportunity to learn what I'm made of. And, unfortunately, life is not a smooth trajectory upwards. And it is in these moments where you are truly tested, and I was mentally and physically.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a story. Now, so then how long were you hospitalized, and how long did it take you to get back to being able to move again?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with acute compartment syndrome, and that's from blunt force trauma to a limb. And my leg, was twice the size of a normal leg. They had done an emergency surgery, so they cut my right calf muscle on each side because you have fascia that protects your muscles and it's like saran wrap, it doesn't give. So they had to just basically release the pressure. But because once they sliced my leg, these holes were so big, they had to take a skin graft from my thigh. So I was in hospital for weeks. And even though they had saved my leg and they were unsure of my ability to walk again, the biggest risk was infection. Mm-hmm. So I went through about 20 hyperbaric chamber sessions where you're lying in this chamber and it's high oxygen environment. It's in a burn unit. And then I spent the next pretty much 2 years learning to walk again. I didn't work. I focused. I attribute many of my characteristics to ballet, good and bad. But the good thing was I was able to apply a discipline to my physical therapy routine, and I was militant about it. I don't remember much of my hospitalization, but I do remember my surgeon, Dr. Prieto, coming into the room and serving me that sentence that, we saved your leg, but we don't know if you'll have any functionality. Mm-hmm. And I have learned that as you move through life, and I'm about to enter my 42nd year, that there are pivotal moments in one's life, and you can either pay attention to it or not. And that was a defining moment for me, because in that exact moment, even though I was, medicated and on pain medication and pretty distraught, I didn't want to accept it. Mm-hmm. I remember after he said those words, in my head, I was like, I'm not going to accept it. I'm going to prove you wrong. And I had no basis for being able to prove him wrong, but I was just determined. And I just really worked as hard as I could with physical therapy, 4.5 hours each day. And at the end of those 2 years, I still was unable to walk properly. I had a limp. I had these AFOs, ankle foot orthotics. I couldn't wear heels. I pretty much hated myself and hated my situation because I put in 2 years of hard work. Yeah. And they were like, okay, now go into the world. And I was horrified. And as a ballerina, you're acutely aware of how your body is, your gait, the way you walk. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I was pretty pissed off. So I wanted to fix it. I'm a perfectionist and I wanted to be perfect. And so for whatever reason, I found myself swimming in a pool in San Francisco. And I learned to swim as a child in New Zealand, but I was not a swimmer. And I just navigated towards water and realized that it made me feel free. Mm-hmm. And, when you move across a pool, you're weightless. And I do remember the biggest barrier for me getting to the pool was, oh my God, people are going to see my scars. Because at that time, my skin graft, it's like 8 by 6 inches on my thigh. It was so angry and red because it was still healing. Mm-hmm. But when I got in the pool, people are just looking at you, at your face, and they're just interacting with you. And I felt this sort of sense of community that I was just someone in the pool, and I couldn't swim very well, but nobody was judging me or pigeonholing me as a patient. I'd spent 2 years being identified as a patient, and I was tired of it. I was sick of it. Yeah. And so, I found myself swimming laps in a pool. It wasn't pretty, but I got from one end to the other.
Yeah. And was swimming kind of helping you heal, or is it kind of part of your rehab or physical therapy?
No, it wasn't part of my formal rehab, but for me, I just felt very stuck mentally and physically, because I use exercise to relieve stress, to relieve anxiety, or, the odd time when I'm annoyed at something. And I think, your listeners can agree. It's a great way to, you get those endorphins. And I couldn't run down the street. I just felt stuck. And in the pool, I was able to have this movement that felt normal. I wasn't aware that my gait was wrong or that I had a limp. I felt kind of normal. So it became mentally healing for me in many ways. And I would go there and I applied my discipline. I was told that you swim 80 laps and it's a mile. And I've since learned that was incorrect. I didn't even fact check it. I've been in the Bay Area since 1995. And this was 2009. I had no idea people swam in the Bay. I was like, this is ridiculous. But I'm down for, if anyone dares me to do something, I'll show up. And so I just said to the guys, what do I do? And they said, just swimsuit, cap and goggles. And I was so thin. I'd lost so much muscle tone. I was probably 120 pounds soaking wet. And I got in that bay and one of the guys recorded it because they thought that I was going to chicken out. But I didn't. Yeah. And that was just another defining moment for me. I was lit up like a Christmas tree. I could not believe that I was in this stretch of water. You can hear the seals barking. You can see the Golden Gate Bridge. And it was just, this was everything I was looking for. I just felt like I had been set free from this sort of cage of disability, this cage of being stuck. It hit me in that exact moment. And I joined the Dolphin Club the next month and began swimming every single day.
Wow. So with that cold water, like the first time, did you like turn blue or anything?
Oh, I was cold.
Yeah.
And it's always cold when you get in cold water. And I love that that's a sort of a challenge. And I swim in the morning, and it's always difficult to get in the water. But I love that you're getting the hardest activity done.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the day is a breeze. But it is very cold. It's, I belong to both the clubs here in San Francisco, the Dolphin Club and the South End Rowing Club. And it's just this community of superheroes, but they're just everyday people. They leave the club and they go about their day. Most of the time, you don't even know what someone does for a living because it doesn't matter.
Right.
But we're all just connected by this water, and it's really become this church for me. The water is very much a spiritual altar, if you will, and we're just part of the congregation. The seals and the sea lions are out there, and it's their swimming pool.
Yeah.
And I just love that, you're in this huge city, but you can connect with nature every day. And I love that, growing up on a sheep and cattle farm, that connection with nature. And there is a playfulness when you get in that water. You get sort of giddy because of the cold. And it's just, as adults, we forget how to play. And so right from the very beginning, it was just, wow, this is just this grown-up playground. And I was ready to just be free and have fun. So I was very, very cold when I got in that water. And it's November, so it's, coming into winter. But thankfully, you get rewarded if you belong to these clubs. You get to have a sauna and a hot shower. So you just have to make it up the staircase to the club. And, people are in varying forms of feeling the cold. Some people, if you have a little bit of weight on you, it helps. But I'm very familiar with the signs of impending hypothermia.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because anyone that's listening that isn't from the Bay Area or doesn't know about the water there, I'm actually from the Bay Area. I grew up there, never even considered the idea of getting in the Bay. Didn't know people even did that. And I grew up swimming. I was swimming in pools and all that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then a friend of mine was doing the Alcatraz to San Francisco swim. And so I said, I'll do that. Sounds like fun. It's about I think it's like 1.4 miles and it's pretty choppy. And I knew it was going to be cold, but I had no idea what I was getting into, because I'm like pretty low body fat and I get cold so easily, like even just a little breeze and I'm freezing. And so I got in there. I wore one of those Farmer John wetsuits with the sleeveless. Yep. Mm-hmm. And I thought, and my friends didn't even wear a wetsuit at all. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. There's no way I could ever make it without a wetsuit. So I did the Farmer John, which I didn't know, but when you have those sleeveless suits, you lose your heat through your armpits. So it doesn't really help that much with the cold. It keeps you a little more buoyant, but it doesn't really help with the cold. So I swam the thing and it was hard. It was not an easy swim. It's very rough. You have to do a lot of sighting because the waves are kind of like, you're just kind of swimming up and down these waves and you can't really see the land very well. So you have to just keep popping your head up and looking. And anyway, I felt like pretty good. Like I finished the race.
So you did it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I went between the pier and everything and got out of the water. And I saw my parents there and I started to say hello and I couldn't move my mouth. And I was like, interesting. And so I went over.
It's a perfect time for dental surgery, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, my whole body I didn't know what was happening, but then I went to go get my bag and I had to ask somebody because it was behind this counter and I tried to speak again and I couldn't. I just pointed at my bag and then they gave it to me. And then I got in the hot, like you mentioned, the sauna and the showers. I got in the shower and I turned it on hot and I was shivering and I couldn't stop shivering. And then I went into the steam room or sauna and I sat there for a while and I was shivering the whole time. Yeah. And I got out of there and I just said to everyone I was with, I said, I got to go home. And I went home and laid on the couch and I think I was going into hypothermia. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, that was my experience with San Francisco Bay water.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful indoctrination to hypothermia. And what I've learned through just being part of this club, and I commend you on taking the plunge literally and doing that because it is intimidating. it is a bit weird, really. And I was just fortunate to, by joining the Dolphin Club and the South End Rowing Club, without knowing at the time, I had inserted myself in this community of people who I think all these crazy ideas are good ideas. And most importantly, everyone is so willing to share. And a swimmer told me at the very beginning of my membership there to always set myself up for success. And the key to trying open water swimming is definitely swim with a buddy to begin with. But instead of thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to swim a mile in the bay or whatever, just chip away at it a little bit at a time. So, I haven't been in the bay. I've been back in New Zealand and I haven't been in the bay for a few weeks. And so you lose that acclimation. Mm-hmm. By exposing yourself to the cold water, your body gets used to it and it actually generates what's called brown fat. Mm-hmm. So it is fat that has mitochondria and so it generates heat and it stores around your organs, and it's basically a survival mechanism. So by chipping away, say you're preparing for an Alcatraz swim, the way I would prepare, and I'm going to start getting in the bay myself, is going in for 5 minutes and then getting out. Then tomorrow going in for 10 minutes, and maybe the next day you're still at just 10 minutes, but just chipping away a little bit, but leaving with a feeling of success. So not getting to that point where you are hypothermic. We all sort of get caught up in this bravado. Your buddies are like, oh yeah, come on, you'll be fine. You can swim a mile in the pool. Like, yeah, let's just go to that buoy.
Yeah.
Try to ignore that. But also, we lose most of our heat through our heads. So with marathon open water swimming, the rules are very strict. We do not wear wetsuits and you are not allowed thermal caps. So it has to be silicone or latex. But, for people that are starting out, and if you're curious about swimming in the bay without a wetsuit, remember your head is where you lose the heat. Yeah. So you can actually get these thermal caps, neoprene caps. And it really, I would encourage your listeners to really try this because we're all capable of far more than we think we are. Mm-hmm. And what I love so many things about open water and I've learned so much, but we live in a pretty prescribed society. Even when you're driving, there's warning signs to slow down, there's a corner, change your speed. I love that there is nothing like that in the sea. And it's just this space to explore yourself, your limits, and each swim, I can tell you nobody regrets a cold water swim because you're basically lit up like a Christmas tree, and that's the endorphins from the cold. But there's a sense of accomplishment that you did something. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners are triathletes and, used to sort of striving for a spot on the podium and getting a prize. But marathon open water swimming is quite the opposite. There are no cash prizes. There's no medals. There's no podium. It's richer than that, in that the prize is a sense of accomplishment for yourself.
Right.
And you're not competing. I see these races like the Alcatraz race that you did, and it's like 1,000 people in the water. And that would actually, I find that quite difficult because you're all vying for position. Yeah. But with open water swimming, you're not competing with anyone else except yourself. And you're competing specifically with your mind, because if you tell yourself you can't do it, I guarantee you won't be able to do it. Yeah. If you tell yourself you can, I would bet my bottom dollar that you can.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So then you were swimming in the bay and loving it, and then you started getting into more longer swims and some big open water swims, like you did the English Channel. And how long did that take for you to build up to that?
Well, that's sort of an interesting story. And I think in today's world, we don't embrace failure as much as we should. So I joined the Dolphin Club. I was doing these club swims and, I swam from Alcatraz. And then you're like, okay, well, if I could do that, I can do that. And I got a little bit ahead of myself because I had been asked to join a relay swim across the English Channel. So a relay swim is 6 people and you each swim an hour. So you rotate until you get to your destination. So you have 5 hours on the boat to warm up, to eat, to rest, and then you get in for another hour. And you just keep rotating. I was pretty excited about that. And this was in 2011. And I was living with a few roommates at the time. And this guy, Neil, had climbed Everest and swum the English Channel. And I remember sitting on my floor with his dog, and he's like, Kim, you're going to England to swim a relay. Why don't you do a solo while you're there? And I was like, that's a great idea. That's a really great idea. So me being me, I was like telling people how excited I was, and people were frankly quite shocked because it takes a lot of preparation to swim a solo, a lot. But I went ahead with it, and I'd done the relay. And then I think a day or two later, no wonder people thought I was crazy, because it was just a harebrained idea. And I got in the water, and I didn't even make it halfway across the English Channel. I had to be pulled because all of these swims are timed based on the current. So, for example, the English Channel, you're swimming from England to France. Based on the boat pilot, you have a boat pilot, and he tells you the time when you jump in according to the tides, because everyone swims at different speeds, but you want to be approaching your destination on an incoming tide, a flood. Mm-hmm. Because if you miss that window and you're on your way to France and it starts ebbing, so moving back, the water's moving back towards England, you'll never make it to shore.
Yeah.
So he pulled me because we were going to be out there for probably 3 days for me to swim the English Channel. And I was annoyed at myself because I'm not used to failure, being a straight A student and all that. So I really came back to the States with my tail between my legs, and everyone was sort of like, well, I told you so. But that lit a fire inside of me because I didn't want to give up. I told myself that I was going to prepare as much as possible, and I was going to come back. And when I came back to the English Channel a few years later, it was such a wonderful swim for me. It took me 12 hours and 12 minutes. And I have this funny habit of saying, woo, when I'm out there. It's just sort of this expression of joy. I can't really, it's weird. I just remember the sun was shining, and my boat captain, Andy, was looking at me, and he'd go, woo. And he's just this sort of, very conservative Englishman. But here he was going, woo. And I was going, woo. And it was just a really joyful swim. And but that was a reward of hard work and a little bit of luck. What I love about open water swimming is also it's very humbling, because you can prepare meticulously, as I did, but you're also at the mercy of Mother Nature. Mm-hmm. I was gifted with fabulous weather conditions that day. You get what you get the day of your swim, and you have to deal with that. And I love that because it's exciting. You don't know how it's going to play out. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners are very motivated, goal-oriented, and want to win and want to succeed. But there is this, I've discovered a real joy and freedom in just controlling what you can control, and then just surrendering and just, okay, come what may. So I got a lot of luck with the weather that day. So that contributed to my swim.
Yeah, that's another great point, is just kind of accept what is happening. And
yes,
that's it. Like, you can't do anything about it. If that swim were disrupted for some reason by the weather, then you'd have to maybe do it again. And that's just...
Yeah. And similarly with your body, we prepare for these events with the expectation that the day you wake up for your event, your body's going to cooperate. Yeah. You could have an upset stomach. You could get the flu. That is just the luck of the draw. So being able to accept those circumstances that are out of your control, I think for me personally have been real growth moments for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you had mentioned that you, after you finished that English Channel, it was kind of like the thing that made you think, well, I could do so much more than this, right?
Oh, absolutely. That failure of the English Channel, it gave me an appreciation, because I wasn't trying to do the solo as sort of a disrespect to the sport that, oh, I can do it. I don't need to prepare for it. It was more, I was just so excited for an adventure, but it really put me in my place. It was such a great learning experience, because I got to see and feel firsthand that it is an enormous feat that takes a lot of work. And so it gave me an appreciation and understanding of what I was really getting into. And I was just determined that I just wanted to fix that, erase that. With my leg injury, I didn't want to accept not finishing something or not doing something properly.
Yeah, right. So now let's kind of fast forward it to the most recent, I don't even know if it's your most recent, but the documentary.
Yep.
So the name of the documentary, by the way, for listeners, is Kim Swims, Reconsider What is Truly Possible from Within Oneself. I love that subtitle. It's awesome. Mm-hmm. And then this quote that I think you had it on your site, but it was also one that I picked up watching it. I loved. You said, if you think you can't do something or you're afraid of doing something, that's exactly when you should do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. I have learned that is so, so true. And I can expand on that if you want.
I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So, we live in a society where you can easily get very, very comfortable. You can live behind your white picket fence. You've got your commute. You know exactly that's 45 minutes driving to work. You've got your coffee mug. You've got your snacks. You go to work. You know what meetings you've got. It's all very measured, and there's some satisfaction in that for sure. And you have your finances in order, and you think you have the life. You're adulting, if you will. Mm-hmm. And that's supposed to be the sort of goal. That's what we're striving for. So you get sort of lulled into this false sense of security and comfort. And for me, I'm realizing that I learn the most when I face the things that scare me. And so I really stand by that statement 100%, because what I have learned, at least through my experiences, is that when you push through that fear, when you face something head on that you're afraid of, it could be asking someone out on a date, it could be climbing a mountain, it comes in all different forms, but the satisfaction of doing something you didn't think you could is an amazing reward. And I've learned that the rewards far outweigh the risks. I have learned that right on the other side of where you're most uncomfortable, where you're most fearful, is this treasure, this bounty of self-discovery. And again, it's not monetary, it's not a medal, it's not a certificate of achievement. And the reward will manifest in different ways for different people. And I can share more about that, my experience. But that satisfaction, that sense of achievement, that sense of self is like this little nugget that you can tuck away in your back pocket. And I'm rather accident prone. I've had some pretty dramatic injuries and health issues along the way. And so I have learned, me personally, that those little nuggets are things that I can sort of pull out in these trying times of despair and disappointment or, tragedy that have occurred during my life, and remind myself that I'm stronger than I think I am. And to sort of remind myself, well, you went through that really hard swim, you finished it. And so I know you're having a really bad day, but remember, you did that, Kim, did that. And it's sort of this self-talk that I think we all need to do. And we all need to be proud of who we are and our achievements and not compare ourselves with others. And so just have these little nuggets that they're just for you. It's this little thing that you can just tuck away and pull out at any time, and nobody can take it away from you. You break up a relationship, nobody can take it away from you. You lose your house or your fortune, nobody can take that achievement away. You have it forever. Yeah. And that is, for me at least, has been an incredible discovery.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. I love that. And like even some of the little things that, I don't know if you're familiar with Wim Hof at all. But,
yes, I am.
Okay.
The Iceman.
The Iceman. Yeah. So I've talked about him on the podcast, and
he's incredible.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I went through his weekend workshop and
you did. I've always wanted to do that. Oh, cool.
Yeah, it is. It was really cool. It was really worth doing. And there's some little things that come out of that where it's like what you're just saying it's totally resonates. Like I've always had this thing with hating cold, any kind of cold water. And I grew up swimming in outdoor pools in Northern California. It's not warm in the winter. But it was just every single time it was a force. Like I had to just completely force myself to get in the water. I hated every single time I jumped in the water in the winter when it was cold, but I just did it. But the Wim Hof, it kind of teaches you to embrace the cold. That's one of his things. It's like, gotta love the cold. And
well, let me ask you something real quick. Yeah. When you said you've hated every time getting in the water, did you ever hate getting out of the water? Did you regret a workout? I guarantee you didn't.
No, no, it didn't work that way somehow.
Yeah. So it's knowing that, it's going to be a little bit of suffering, but you're going to be rewarded.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. And like there's still little things that came out of the Wim Hof stuff was like I started doing the cold showers, but only at the end of my shower. I just turned it on for like a minute and a half on cold. And then it just, after I did that for a while, it just became a habit where it's like, so then every day I'm taking this warm shower and I'm relaxing, enjoying it. And then I know that I'm going to turn that water on cold. And it's not like if I skip it, something's missing and I feel bad. So now it's like every day I have to turn on cold and I'm in there for a minute and a half. And yeah, now I'm in Texas right now, and it's like the water just doesn't get that cold, but still I do it as cold as it possibly can go. And it's just a tiny, tiny little accomplishment to start the day,
Yeah, no, and I commend you on that because nobody is cracking the whip and saying, okay, now we're going to turn it on cold water. You're doing it yourself.
Right.
And even though you're sort of discounting it as just this little thing that you're doing, the fact that it has become part of your routine, the fact that you are voluntarily suffering is really cool, because we're not wired that way necessarily to do that, because it's human nature to recoil from anything that makes us uncomfortable. It's survival, right?
Yeah.
And so to be able to sort of change the wiring in your head, and now it's become this routine for you, I think is fabulous. I would caution you, though, that it is a slippery slope. So maybe you'll be swimming in the bay more often or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Trust me, from my experience, it is a very slippery slope.
Yeah. No, it's great, because I think it helps to get over that fear, or whether it's a fear or hatred or whatever it is of cold. There is something to that where it's like, yeah, now when I'm faced with cold water, getting in cold water, it's not as much of a like that stomach feeling where it's like, oh God, I have to do this. It's more of like, it's a challenge and it's kind of exciting. And you know what the other end of that, getting out, like you said, is.
No, I think that's really cool, because it's easy to just be comfortable.
Yeah.
That's easy. It's easy to just not change it up. But the fact that you are noticing the effects of exposure to cold water is really cool, because that is exactly what happens. The more you expose yourself to the cold water, and that was a big part of my training. I trained in the pool, and, I didn't do any of this alone. I had so many people saying, okay, Kim, in the pool, like lift your elbow. And so I became a swimmer. But my point of this is basically that's how you train for these open water swims. So anyone who's preparing for Alcatraz, you can't just train in the pool. You have to not only to learn how to navigate with waves and learn that there's no black line that you're following, which is scary. I accept that I understand that for a lot of people, but you have to, by continually exposing yourself to the cold water, you're training your mind and your body to accept it as somewhat normal.
Right.
And a lot of the uncomfortable part of this is governed by fear. And that's your mind saying, oh my God, this is going to be so scary. So it's just I call it it's literally the exposure method, with public speaking, for example. That's why people go to Toastmasters. The more you expose yourself to something that is uncomfortable, the easier it gets. I guarantee, though, you'll always be cold when you get in the cold water. And anyone who says it's not cold is lying.
That's right. Yeah. So, okay, I want to get into your 30-mile swim. So I have so many, it's just so fascinating to me, and I have so many questions, but I'll try to, because we don't have like all day, try to boil it down.
I love talking to a captive audience, so I could talk all day.
Okay. All right. So first of all, like I'm curious about what made you pick that swim. Like, what was it about the Farallon Islands and San Francisco and all this? Like, because for me, when I think of the Farallon Islands, I used to surf, and that was one place I never would go. I'd never go up that far north, because I thought, well, that's where all the sharks are. I mean, there's sharks all over Northern California in the ocean, but they all kind of congregate around the Farallon Islands.
Yeah. So logically, it seems like a wonderful place to do a swim, right?
Right.
I discovered the Farallon Islands pretty early on in my swimming journey. Once I sort of became comfortable with swimming, I'd been invited to join this team called Night Train Swimmers, and they do swims around the world, all for charity. And I love, making these events more than about myself. I get the reward personally, and, my soul has a few more wrinkles, but I like helping others. And so I was really sort of captivated by this community of people that were swimming, pushing themselves, but doing it for charity. And I had been invited to be on a relay swim to the Farallon Islands, and this was back in 2011. And so we were swimming from San Francisco to the islands, rotating hour-long shifts, and I was the only woman on the team. And when you do a relay, you don't know who's going to be the last person to finish, and you sort of rotate. And when you're getting closer and closer to the Farallon Islands, you really do feel like you're playing Russian roulette. You don't know who's going to be that person. And we finished the swim. We were successful. And then I couldn't believe that I'd done that. It was so scary, but so exciting. And it really tapped into something that I didn't know that I had inside me. And, and so then I organized an all-women's team, but to do that swim, and we completed it. And we, as a team, would go out there on the weekends and literally frolic in the water there. And it wasn't as scary, I guess. I felt like a connection. And with each of my swims around the world, I like to get to know the community that I'm there. You know, when I swam in Japan from Honshu to Hokkaido, I prayed in a 2,500-year-old shrine. I like to pay my respects and sort of deference to that space. And I would go out there on the weekends to the Farallons. And for your listeners that don't know about the Farallons, it's sort of this jagged outcropping of rocks 30 miles west of San Francisco. It's actually still part of San Francisco. And it was pretty cool with the swim. I got a phone call from Congresswoman Jackie Spear because that's still in her area. And that was really cool. But it is a marine sanctuary. It is literally teeming with seals and sea lions. It has the largest population of seabirds in the contiguous USA. It's a breeding ground for great white sharks. But in those times when we go out there, the water's so clear. I sort of say it's the Galapagos Islands of California. And it became this wonderland for me. And I just felt, I mean, call me crazy, but sort of a spiritual connection. Mm-hmm. And no woman had completed that swim from the Farallon Islands to San Francisco. 4 men had done it. Ted Erickson, 1967. I wanted to do that. I felt such a connection to those islands that I wanted to be the first woman to do it, not to get the accolades as the first woman or beat other women. It was more, I felt like those were my islands. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So now when you're out there, do you ever, like, especially when you're around the Farallons, do this thought of sharks ever come to your mind, or is it just something you just completely block out?
Oh, no, it's constantly in your head.
Okay.
And there's sort of this thrill, I guess. I didn't realize that I was sort of a thrill seeker that way, but I'd be lying if I didn't say there was sort of this intoxication of just like, it's sort of cheating death, I guess, if that sounds, I mean, I sound completely crazy saying that, but I have never seen a shark. And whenever I get in the water there, I took so many videos with my GoPro. The seals would just frolic beside me. They would get so close to me, I could see their eyelashes, and they would just sort of look at me. And I call them dog mermaids. You know, I love dogs. I'm a 12-year-old Taylor Swift fan. I love dogs. And ask anyone in my neighborhood, I'm pretty much on a watch list for petting dogs. But I just saw them as animals. And I know from riding horses and growing on a farm, if you show fear, animals will sense that and they'll be like, what am I supposed to be fearful of? And with horses, they'll take advantage of you. But I just became so relaxed and they just accepted me as a friend. Yeah. And I know this sounds really weird, but they were just so curious. And so sharks were always in the back of my mind, but I was kind of distracted by the fact that these seals hadn't seen humans before. Right. And they knew that I was not to be feared. They knew I was friendly. And so I thought about sharks every time I was out there, but for my swim, I really felt like I'd paid deference to those islands. And that's where the great white sharks breed. But, I joke with people, I'm foreign meat. I'm from New Zealand, so I'm not on their menu. So perhaps that's why they didn't, why they didn't eat me.
Yeah. Did you ever hear about anybody getting attacked out there?
So just a few weeks before my solo swim, my training partner, Simon Dominguez, was circled by a great white shark attempting the same swim. So that was extremely frightening. His wife and one of his daughters was on the boat. So that was a pretty traumatic experience, and he, got on the boat immediately. And so then it was just the first moment of sort of, wow, there really are sharks here, and this is a big risk. But this was just 2 weeks before my swim, and the scientists were sort of cautioning me, and they said, look, Kim, the sharks, because they migrate there pretty much at a certain time of year, but the scientists said that they've sort of come back earlier this year. So they were cautioning me against doing the swim. Mm. But Simon, being a gracious friend, he said, me completing the swim would feel like a completion for him. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So.
Wow. So, okay. So now with the swim, what would you say was the most difficult part of that particular swim?
Oh, these swims are interesting because you don't know how your body is going to hold up. But the most difficult part for me was, I'd made this swim public. I was interviewed by a film crew just before the boat left the dock in Tiburon, and people were going to be able to track my swim with a GPS spot tracker. So you look at Google Maps and you can see every 10 minutes this little pin, and it's on the boat, so you can see where I am. So for me, as I was taking the boat ride out there, it takes about 2.5 hours with a really fast boat, which we had. And I had 2 boats because for extra sort of support. And, my mum was on the boat. I mean, I've done all these swims I've said there's nothing solo about a solo swim. It's a team effort. So although I'm a swimmer in the water, there is no way I could do any of these swims without the amazing teams that I've been blessed with. But the boat ride out there, I was sort of contemplating how I would deal with the fact that what if I got there, because I was starting the swim around 11 o'clock at night. I jumped in at 11:15, and people are like, why did you jump in at night? And it's based on my swim speed and the current. So we wanted to be approaching San Francisco on an incoming flood. So that was why I jumped in at 11:15. But that whole ride out there, I was like, what if I get on the boat, what if I get out there in my swimsuit and I can't get in the water? Like, how stupid, like, I was like, how silly is that? Like, how embarrassing is that? Like, I've told the news, and like Kim Chambers gets out to the Farallon Islands and can't even dip her toe in. I was like, that was what I was worried about mostly. So that sort of overshadowed the shark aspect. But I had this sort of moment, I was on the swim platform at the stern of the boat. You're just amped up. The adrenaline it's just, I mean, for anybody who's done races, I'm sure you can relate. You get the surge of adrenaline. It's just electrifying. And I was sitting on the swim platform at the stern of the boat. I was in my swimsuit. I put lanolin on to protect against chafing, and it does give you some sort of insulation under your armpits and so on. And I'd said goodbye to everybody, and I'm sitting there and sort of lapping invitingly. It's this inky black water. It's pitch black. Like, I could have been, just around the corner from the boat club. It was so dark, I couldn't even see the Farallons. And there was sort of this chorus of sea lions sort of barking, and I'm sure they were just discussing, like, who's this crazy lady? Like, what is she doing?
Right.
It's a Friday night. She should be at the bars having a good time. Here she is. So I just, but I was sitting there, and what was most challenging for me was, so I'd made that commitment. I was like, okay, I'm going to get in the water, but what if that moment when I slipped into that black inky water, there could be a shark just swimming by. That I was like, I don't know if I'm slipping into the mouth of a great white shark. And I still struggle with that moment because no one was holding a gun to my head. Honestly, I don't know how I did it because it's nuts. But I was sort of sitting there, and then my mum poked, well, hurry up then, get on with it. And I'm like, Mum, I'm having a moment here, but we're all sort of amped up, like, let's get the swim, let's do it. And there's a 5-mile sort of zone, I guess, where you want to, once you've sort of left sort of a 5-mile radius of the islands, you're in safer water. That's what the scientists said. So it was just like, let's just get the hell out of here. And then, there were other challenging moments along with the swim, but I really have a hard time. I still can't believe that I did it. It's pretty much insane. Yeah. And I feel like a completely different person. I'm like, that's just nuts. But I did it. And so the mind, the lesson for me, and I want to tell people, the mind is so powerful. Mm-hmm. And it's committing to a goal. And you don't need it doesn't mean that you have to jump in at the Farallons at 11 o'clock at night. It's just doing something that your mind is telling you can't do it. And that has been a powerful lesson for me. Like, that was my mind. And I didn't know I was capable of it until I did it. So if I can do it, everyone else can do it. You don't have to be an Olympic swimmer to do these things. And you don't even have to be a swimmer. It's just about telling yourself and also surrounding yourself with people who believe in you. I mean, everyone on that boat was like, this is great. You're prepared. And you sort of have to create this sort of bubble of positivity and avoid the naysayers.
Yeah. So what do you do out there when you're swimming? I mean, it's even though you have all your crew around you, you're solo, your head's in the water. What kinds of things are you thinking about, and what starts to become interesting that maybe wouldn't be normally?
Well, and everyone's different. For me, the beginning of the swim, and I speak very openly, so I hydrate massively for these swims, and I needed to pee. And that first part of the swim, I was like, I'm not going to pee because I don't want to let the sharks know that I'm here. I want to be in stealth mode. This is literally what went through my head. And so that was my focus. And then you try to get into this sort of rhythm. It's sort of a choreography with the boat because, the water is sort of swelling and you cannot touch the boat. If you touch the boat, you're disqualified. And I have an observer on the boat. So you swim alongside the boat. I swam on the right side, on the starboard side, and I like to see where the captain is at the helm. And then I had each of my team members wear a little glow stick around their necks, and so I knew who was who on the boat. And so for me, and everyone's different, once I've settled into this sort of rhythm of like, okay, I've got the boat, and you have to also manage your adrenaline because although I'm not a fast swimmer, you don't want to just get in that water and just swim as fast as you can. You really have to get into this sort of meditative state, for me at least. And so that occurs, and you sort of settle into a rhythm. And what I do is I I look at the people on my boat, and they're all chosen because they are special people in my life for various reasons. And then what I do to sort of occupy my mind is I focus on one person and I replay an encounter with that person. It could be a barbecue 2 weeks ago. And it's sort of like I create this own little like TV show in my head. And then another person comes out and I focus on them. So some people count, some people sing songs. Mm-hmm. But for me, I just sort of press play on this sort of mental TV, and I try and fill my head with good thoughts, because there are many negative thoughts that enter my head during these swims. Like I vomited pretty much most of that swim. And then I was worried that I was going to get hypothermia, because we feed every 30 minutes. Some people feed every hour. We all tried different things, and it has to be liquid because you can't chew and swim at the same time. But you just want as much calories as possible. And it's like adding a log to the fire. You just want to keep stoking the fire. Mm-hmm. And that helps prevent hypothermia because you're giving your body energy. And when I was vomiting through that swim, I was like, oh, there's no way I'm taking in enough calories. I'm going to get hypothermic. And then then you sort of have this conversation with yourself. You're like, oh my God, I'm cold. No, you're not. So it's just, you're constantly trying to talk yourself out of what is actually happening. You are cold. So, you are on the verge of hypothermia.
Yeah. So with the vomiting, what is that from? Is that from all the waves and bouncing up and down, or is that just not having like it's a completely different environment? Or
yeah, it happened to me in my swims. It could be adrenaline. I'm not exactly sure, but it's not pretty. You can vomit and swim at the same time, in case you're wondering. But again, this is not a sexy sport. Yeah, I don't. It could be nerves, but again, it's learning to sort of roll with that, because you train, you expect your body to show up in perfect form. So you can get very discouraged in these moments. And for your listeners, you could be in a race or whatever, and something goes wrong, just to be able to stick with it.
Yeah,
because you can move through that. But the biggest hurdle for me is sort of the negative self-talk, where my mind's telling me I'm cold. Or the worst thing that I've learned you can do as an open water swimmer is check the destination. Yeah. Be like, it's either, oh my God, I'm almost there, because no, you're not. You're further away than you think. Or you're looking at land and you're like, I'm not going to get there, because you time this on the tide movement. And that has always been sort of the nail in the coffin for me, for my swims, to make it more difficult, is I know better than to look at the destination, but I'm guilty of doing that in every swim. And I can't tell you how heartbreaking it is when, like, I could see the Golden Gate Bridge, and then you don't know what time of day it is because I don't wear a watch. And then all of these thoughts enter your head and you're like, I'm not going to make it. There's no way. So there's sort of this self-flagellation, I guess, that happens during these swims, that makes it more difficult than it should. So
yeah, that's got to be tough to avoid. Now, what about the one thing I was thinking is, like, every time you take a breath, you're seeing all of your crew sitting on the boat, and they're all like bundled up and warm. And do you ever think like, oh, I would do anything to trade places with them?
Oh yeah. And if anyone is curious about crewing for a swim, the worst thing that you can do is bundle up in front of the swimmer, because you're like, what the hell? I'm here in this cold water swimsuit and you're wearing a puffy down jacket and now you're putting on a hat? Okay, great. Thank you. And then the next worst thing that you can do as a crew member is, because you get sort of like in this prima donna mode, you're like, when you see someone turning their back to you and they're maybe checking your phone, you're like, like in your head, you're like, excuse me, I'm swimming here and I need you to focus on me. And so it's just, but you're out there for, like, your crew's out there for, 12 hours, 15 hours. So they're going to be doing their own thing, but you get really, well, for me at least, you're like, hang on a second, like, I'm not a prima donna, but you can check your online banking another time. Focus on me. So that's just my experience. But crew is an integral part of the success of each of my swims. I wouldn't be where I am today without the team that's on the boat, and also just the community that has really shepherded me through all of this. That just from somebody saying, Kim, I'm cheering you on, I'll be watching the tracker. And that helps me as well, knowing that, there's all these people watching. And it's always fun. I used to work at Adobe, and I'd have colleagues take photos during my swims and, get my phone afterwards, and they're watching my swim on their screens. And it was just I love that it just became this real shared experience, and I share all of my achievements with everyone, because there's nothing solo about a solo swim. And I love that. I love that you have to rely on people.
Yeah, absolutely. So what motivates you to keep going when you're in those really bad times out there and the negative thoughts are flowing? And what is it that really keeps you motivated? Is it that you put it out there, like, I'm going to do this and I can't back out now?
There's a little bit of that, but I'll give you one example. When I swam from Northern Ireland to Scotland across the North Channel, and that's 53-degree water. That was 13 hours and 6 minutes, and those 6 minutes are very important. Some people want to get across as fast as possible, but I'm just proud that I succeeded. That year there were unusual amounts of jellyfish, and that swim almost killed me, and I really almost killed me. I was stung hundreds of times by lion's mane jellyfish, and they're beautiful, if you look at them from a distance, but they're sort of were so large. They were like these big trash cans. And this was my last swim of the Ocean 7, and it is arguably most difficult because it's very, very cold. And I think I was like the 27th person to complete that swim, as opposed to, there's over 1,000 people that have swum the English Channel. But I was stung hundreds of times by jellyfish. All the energy my body was supposed to be using to keep me warm was fighting the toxins from the jellyfish. What kept me going in that swim was, I am not doing this again. I am not coming back next year and doing all of this, all that preparation, all that training. I'm not swimming in this cold water ever. Like, I can't do this again. So it's just sort of like, I have to finish this. So that really was what motivated me through that experience. And I ended up in hospital, a respiratory ward, and I was flown back to San Francisco and put in a cardiac ward. And
wow.
That was, and I would look like a gremlin when I finished the swim. I don't remember finishing, but it was just, it's more this, because it takes so much preparation for these swims. You're balancing commitments of your life, a full-time job, and because these are long swims, I guess, people like training for a marathon, that you have to spend the hours training. And, on the weekends I'd be doing 8-hour swims and 10-hour swims. And then you've got a nap, then you've got to have time for food, and then you've got to have somewhat of a social life and balance your job. And it's such an all-consuming goal that, for me at least, it's like, I can't fathom having to go do this all over again.
Yeah.
So let's just get this done. That's sort of really what motivates me. And also, I'm learning to embrace failure, but I still don't like to have incomplete activities in my record,
Yeah, right. And so was the Netflix part of it, I meant to put that down as one of the questions I want to ask you, but how did that come about? How did Netflix end up filming all this?
Yeah, so the director was just sort of new to film, professional photographer, and she just said, well, I'm curious about your story, and can I do this? And it really just grew legs. It literally started from a conversation in the locker room at the Dolphin Club. And it's very weird and surreal for me to have had that experience, and then for it to, you never know what something, how something's going to pan out. And what, now it's on Netflix? I'm like, what? Yeah. So it's just an example again of just a little dream that had a lot of help along the way. So anything is possible. If I can appear on Netflix, anyone can appear on Netflix. So don't be discouraged by or think that, well, this is a silly idea. And I mean, it's just dream as big as you can. And this was the motivation of the director. I was just the swimmer, but you just don't know how your life is going to pan out. And so I feel really grateful that the film is very authentic to who I am. There's some anxiety in handing over your story to somebody and their interpretation of it. And it's very personal, but they followed me around, and I actually found that, there's some moments in the film where I'm quite vulnerable. They were very respectful of me because it was a highly emotional time. And I found the cameras, because I was living by myself at that time, and they became sort of like this person, this being to sort of just let out these emotions. So there's some very raw moments in the film.
Yeah.
But I'm very grateful to the director for capturing me and my story so authentically.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's how I saw it too, is the authenticity was coming through clearly. Mm-hmm. And
at the end of the day, I'm just a farm girl from New Zealand who learned to swim as an adult. Yeah. So anything is possible.
Nice. Yeah, I just love that. So let's see. So we're actually going over an hour, but I just, this topic is so interesting to me. And a lot of the things you say are just for me, very inspirational. And I'm hoping,
thank you.
I think that the audience will find a lot of that as well. And so when you finished, we'll just finish up the Farallon Islands to San Francisco swim. So you finished it in the movie. I mean, you looked incredibly happy and thrilled. I mean, more than, because some of the other swims, like you mentioned, Ireland one, like you were not even really conscious, basically.
Yeah,
so
that's accurate.
So this one, was it your favorite, like of all the things you've done, like in terms of the ending of it?
Yeah, in terms of the ending, yes. The finish line was the Golden Gate Bridge. And in all of my swims, every picture that anyone's taken of me, any of my swims, I'm in tears in various forms of consciousness, but always crying. And it is these tears of, coming under that, approaching the bridge, I kept stopping and I could not believe that I was capable of doing this. I could not believe that this was actually happening. And I started stopping and crying. And, my crew is just like, let's just get this swim over with. But I really, in each of my swims that I've been more conscious than, on the more conscious side of mental activity, I really try to just soak it in. Yeah. And here I was approaching the Golden Gate Bridge. There were boats out there cheering me on. And I just kept holding my hands to my face. It just disbelief that I was capable of doing this. And so it was a very special, and the Golden Gate Bridge is a beautiful finish line. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget that. And then looking up at the bridge as I crossed over, and I just could not stop crying. And it's a sense of joy, it's a sense of shock and gratitude, because I didn't do any of this alone. Yeah. None of it. It is a team effort all the way. And so it's just this, wow, how lucky am I to have these people that devoted their time for me? How lucky am I to have cheated death, essentially, to have done this? And it's just, but I did end up in the hospital after that one. So I was true to my brand of ending up in hospital. I had to have 4 bags of IV fluids, and then it was like midnight, and they said, okay, well, you can go home now. I arrived at the hospital with my swimsuit and my swim jacket covered in lanolin, and I had to leave the hospital in the exact same attire. It was midnight, and my mum was staying in my apartment, and her phone, she only works on Wi-Fi. I basically had to sit outside my apartment building and wait for somebody to come into my building. I looked like a homeless person. I was just so disheveled. And my mum said, I woke her up, but she just sort of went to bed, because she was like, well, you're probably going to stay in hospital for a couple of days. I'll see you tomorrow or something.
Yeah. Wow, anticlimactic, I guess.
So it's not very, again, yeah, it is. That's how it is. You just get it done, and, there is no ticker tape parade. There's no ceremony. It's just, you just get back into your life, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, that's.
But they affect you deeply, for me at least. So they are very defining events for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's very hard to go back to real life afterwards.
Oh, I can only imagine. What that's like. Now, you have a couple charities that you are big on and that you're helping out with. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Yeah.
So I one particular cause that's very near and dear to my heart is using canine connection therapy to help veterans with post-traumatic stress. My grandfather fought in the East Africa campaign against Rommel in World War II and suffered from post-traumatic stress for the rest of his life after he came back. And, my fiance is a veteran. I am involved in many of those organizations. So I just really am a big supporter of that. So it's called Warrior Canine Connection. And you basically use dogs to help veterans heal. And there's sort of the oxytocin is released with interacting with animals, and particularly dogs. So these are the invisible wounds of war. And to me, at least, it doesn't matter what your politics are. You've still got men and women that are putting their lives on the line for their country, and they're coming back shadows of their former selves. Mm-hmm. And these are there's no obvious disability to them, but the rates of suicide are frightening.
Oh, yeah.
So that's something that's very important to me, but also, I'm anti-captivity of sentient beings like orcas and dolphins. I've had amazing interactions with them in the water, and also an organization called Shark Stewards. My friend David McGuire runs it, and he is the world's leading sort of advocate for preventing the shark finning, like getting that banned. And so I was really delighted when you introduced me earlier in the show that you mentioned shark inhabited waters, which is absolutely correct, because it is their living room.
Right.
And, people like, you're scared of sharks. And of course I am. But they are apex predators and they are part of the ecosystem and it is their living room. So I am just a guest. So I love that you said shark inhabited. So I love educating people that, sure, sharks are scary, but I mean, you look at hippopotamus, for example, in our children's books, you see them as these cute characters. They're actually fierce and deadly. Mm-hmm. So it's, I don't think sharks are as threatening as we sort of make them out to be.
Yeah, I guess the opposite would be like shark-infested waters, right?
Yeah, that's what everyone says, and sort of plays up a little bit. No, it's shark inhabited. It's their living room. And I remember there was something on Facebook many years ago, and it said, if someone came into my living room in the middle of the night wearing a Speedo, I'd probably kill him as well. So, just it's that way. I mean, that's probably poor humor, but, here I am in their living room and it's having a healthy respect for that environment.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. And we'll link to those in the show notes as well. So if people want to check those out, if you could just send me the links after we're done, then make sure.
sharksteward.org and Warrior Canine Connection. There's lots of volunteer opportunities too.
Cool. That's awesome. All right. So what's up next for you? Not that you don't deserve to rest for a while, but I don't even know, when did you finish that swim?
That was August of 2015, so almost 4 years ago.
Oh, okay. I thought for some reason I thought it was 2017. I had that in my mind.
Yeah, no, I'd done some other swims after that, but yeah, and I still struggle. Like, as I sort of encourage people to do things I didn't think they can do, the flip side of that is, for me, there's been this sort of struggle with, wow, like, I really did that.
Yeah.
So I caution anyone, like, the rewards are amazing personally, right? It's not about publicity or anything when you do something, but there is this flip side where you're like, it changes you and you can struggle with that. And I've learned to just sort of go with the flow, and my life has taken me in different directions, and I'm just sort of exploring something else right now. Life is a gift, and, we're all going to end the same way. So, and that's the only guarantee that we have in life, that we will one day cease to be here. And so you don't know when that could be. It could be tomorrow. It could be when you're 90. It could be when you're, whatever. But so live each day to the fullest, because it's guaranteed, except that we will all disappear at one point.
That's right. Yeah, that's really, really great to accept that at a deep level. And
yeah, you only have one life, and sure, I've taken more risks than I should have. Nothing's guaranteed, and life is amazing. And I just encourage people to just dream big and try things you didn't think you could do, because we're all going to go. And had some tremendous loss recently, and I know that that's a guarantee. So go out there and be the best version of yourself, because you've only got one body and you've only got one life, and treat it well and just go after it, because you've got nothing to lose, because you're alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Kim, this has been so fascinating and inspiring, and I wanted to say congratulations on everything that you've accomplished.
Thank you.
And also just what you're kind of teaching the world right now with the documentary, with just little interviews like this, and I think it's really you're just doing a lot to help people in general.
Well, thank you, because I do appreciate the opportunity to be on your show, because for me, it's sort of paying it forward. I've learned a great deal, and I had so many people help me along the way, and this is to be of service to hopefully inspire somebody or help somebody is a tremendous feeling. Mm-hmm. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this. I can talk for hours, as you can tell, but thank you, because you don't have to do what I did. I sort of took it to the extreme. So don't compare yourself with what I've done and think you can't do that. Just start with something small. That's what I did.
Right.
And if I could do this, anyone can do this. I mean, anyone can do this. Yeah. So I'm for that. I'm not an Olympian. Yeah. So anything's possible.
Yeah. Cool. Before we go, do you want to give out how people can follow you, get a hold of you?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram and Twitter, Kimberly Swims. It's Ley. It's the Queen's spelling. But my website is kimswims.com, and you can contact me, hello@kimswims.com. And I love interacting with people. This is the joy for me, is hearing people's stories and really showing them anything is possible.
Yes. Awesome. Great way to end it. Thanks so much, Kim, again. And
thank you,
all
Kevin.
the best with your future endeavors.
Thank you. And good luck to you and your listeners.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening to another episode of the TriSwimCoach podcast. If you like this show, consider giving us a 5-star review on iTunes, and we'll read it off on the next show. And to get the latest triathlon swimming tips, tricks, blogs, and podcasts, go to TriSwimCoach.com. See you next time. Until then, befriend the water.